fingers that needed to be flexed and rubbed and kneaded before the circulation gradually returned to them and they were supple enough to work properly once again. Only then did the boxer finally reach up to unsnap the chin strap of the protective leather helmet and, using both hands, lift it off. Then 2 good sideways shakes of the head, first to the left, then to the right, causing long red hair to spill down onto her narrow shoulders. 20 miles to the east, Stephen Barrow held the inside of his wrist under the spigot to test the temperature of the water, the exact same way they'd showed him how to do it at the hospital almost 7 years ago. "If you use the palm of your hand," the nurse had told them, "you're liable to end up scalding baby." "Baby," she'd said, instead of referring to their daughter by her name. "Baby's skin is much more sensitive than yours, but she has no way of telling you that the water's too hot or too cold until it's too late." Stephen had listened to every word, memorizing each bit of wisdom as though his daughter's very life depended upon his ability to do so. He'd even taken notes at times, so struck had he been by the awesome responsibility that fatherhood had suddenly thrust upon him. He'd marveled back then at his wife's nonchalance, her confidence that everything would be all right, even as he'd secretly wondered if perhaps she loved their new child less than he did. Even then, even in those first terrifying days, he'd wondered. Now, more than 6 years later, bath time was still a special time for father and daughter. Gone was the fear that he'd scald Penny with water that was too hot, or induce instant frostbite with liquid ice. Gone was the need to hold her tiny head above the waterline, or to keep the shampoo from burning her sensitive eyes, the no tears assurance on its label notwithstanding. And though he no longer felt the need to stay in the bathroom for the entire time she was in the tub, he never strayed far, and not a minute went by that he didn't call out her name to make certain she was still okay. "I'm fine, Daddy," she'd call back, and she always was. Bath time was unwinding time. It was that period of transition at the end of the day, that shifting of gears process designed to slow Penny down from full speed ahead to something approaching calm, something that would allow her to sit still for a bedtime story, curl up beside one stuffed animal or another, and eventually let go of the day and slip into sleep. "Look at me," he heard her calling to him, or perhaps to no one in particular. "I'm a unicord." He put down whatever he was doing. Later, he'd be unable to remember just what it had been, and went to her to investigate. It wasn't every day, after all, that your only child was transformed into a unicord. When he poked his head into the bathroom, there was Penny, her long hair piled on top of her head with the assistance of what must have been half a bottle of shampoo and an equal measure of bubble bath. And, true to her description, give or take a letter, she'd somehow managed to create a spike at the very top of her head that pointed straight up, in absolute defiance of the laws of gravity. His reaction was to laugh out loud. His daughter did that to him at least once a day, and often more. Even in the first early weeks of the separation, even during the divorce proceedings and the custody battle that followed, even when there was precious little to feel good about, she'd never lost her ability to make him laugh. "I want to see," she said now, lifting her arms for him to pluck her up and hold her in front of the mirror. "No," he said, "you stay put. I'll be right back." And he'd gone into his bedroom to find a hand mirror, the one he'd used periodically to check on that tiny bald spot threatening to spread across the top of his head. And had the mirror been there on his dresser, where it was supposed to be, that would have been that. He would have picked it up, brought it into the bathroom, handed it to his daughter, and let her see for herself how funny she looked. But the mirror wasn't there, where it was supposed to be. Instead, it was down in the kitchen, where he'd left it the night before after trimming Penny's bangs. But there was something else on the dresser that caught his eye. His camera, a 35mm Nikon that had seen better days but still worked well enough. He picked it up, checked to see if it was loaded, and saw it had 7 exposures left.